memoranda. A total number of stakeholders that made themselves physically present here are 51. My distinguished colleagues, esteemed stakeholders, and all participants, as we come to the close of this important public hearing on the tax reform bills, I want to express my deep appreciation to everyone who has contributed to these deliberations. Your insights, perspectives, and recommendations have enriched our discussions and will go a long way in shaping tax policies and a fair, efficient, and growth-driven legislation. Over the past session, we have critically examined key aspects of our tax system, identifying areas of improvement to enhance revenue generation, promote investment, and ease the burden of taxpayers. The submissions made here will be thoroughly reviewed and considered as we refine these bills to ensure they serve the best interest of all Nigerians. Let me assure you that the National Assembly, the Senate, and by extension the National Assembly, remains committed to enacting reforms that will strengthen our economy and improve the ease of doing business, while ensuring that taxation is equitable and transparent. Once again, I want to use this opportunity to thank the Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister of Trade and Investment, all other ministers that were in attendance from the day we start this. I would also want to acknowledge our appreciation to the chairman of the Presidential Tax Reform Committee for doing just this good service to our nation. I will not close without also acknowledging the committee's appreciation and commendation to the executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. What we are doing today is not a law for one administration. It's a law for all administrations that will come in this country. We want to be paired among those advanced economies that today we see them differently in the way and manner either they collect and make the best and judicious use of all revenue they have collected. On behalf of His Excellency, distinguished Senator Godswill Obot Akpabio, the leadership and principal officers of the Senate, my distinguished colleagues and members of the Committee on Finance, we wish to extend our appreciation for the cooperation we have received. And we want to assure Nigerians that we will bring out the best of recommendations to the Senate and by extension the National Assembly on the legislation on all the 4 bills that have been submitted by His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, in his visionary thinking of making Nigeria attain $1 trillion economy. The phase of reaching to that has begun with these bills. And I want to see a situation where this country will have a very low number, a very, very low number of poverty in the index of development. Nigeria is in the context of meeting up. If we pass this legislation without bias, transparently, without making any section of this country to suffer it, we have taken consideration of all. And I believe that we have a team of consultants. We will call on anyone that we feel is a resource person to contribute to this all-important assignment. And by the grace of God Almighty, we will give this country the desired tax legislation that will propel the economic prosperity of all. Thank you very much.
I will make it very clear as to the circumstances under which the presumption tax issue will be considered for some taxpayers. It will also make it very clear as to the method of collection from these individuals that their income are not up to the level of conventional tax. I studied 30 different countries in the world that are using presumptive tax, and when you go to these countries, you will see voluntary tax compliance in practice. But in our own bill here, in just one paragraph, it was just mentioned that in the event that the income or profit of a taxpayer could not be accurately assessed, that taxpayer should be treated under presumptive tax regime. And then the regime is to be institutionalized by the minister. Presumptive tax regime is normally personal income tax. And when you attach it to the minister, how will the minister go to all the states of the federation who have the power to administer presumptive tax on individual taxpayers? So that power should go to the governor or even commissioner of finance. When I was commissioner of finance in Kano, we used the provision, that small provision, it was just a cut and paste. That provision in Peter 2021 is what would have been pasted into the tax bill. And we used that provision in Peter in 2016, 2017, when I was commissioner of finance. And we were able to get the support of different business groups. And we negotiate, because presumptive tax is just like a negotiated tax. And you discuss with their union, and whatever they accept, you collect this, and then open a register to put their name there. So that when they come for tax clearance certificate, even though they are paying small amount, maybe 100 naira per month, or 200 naira, depending on their capacity, you will be able to determine whether that person is a taxpayer. We know that tax clearance certificate is mandatory if you are to contest election. So if you don't pay even presumptive tax, how will you be qualified for election? The tax authority may not even give you tax exemption certificate. They will just be playing with you at the end of the day. No matter how popular you are, you cannot contest the election. And then many contract and other privileges, if you don't have tax clearance certificate, you will not be entitled to that, and many other things. So I am of the view that, Mr. Chairman, presumptive tax regime should be clearly specified. It should be a chapter of its own, because that is the way to build the culture of voluntary tax compliance. When I start paying maybe 100 naira, 200 naira per month, and my business is growing to the level that you can do full assessment of my income and tax me, I will not feel anything. I will be happy to pay. Resistance will be decreased. And even those in the civil service, many of us that are professors, I think we are entitled to presumptive tax rate until when our income is beefed up beyond our essential need. Then we cannot pay a conventional rate. And that has been what some states were doing some years back. But then as law is coming out like this without adequate provision on presumptive tax, then it will mean that we are not serious about building voluntary tax compliance. The second issue, Mr. Chairman, is about taxes that should be targeting the rich. They are not there in this bill. When I read through the taxes of some countries in the world, I discovered that they have what they call transaction taxes. Transaction taxes on securities. When you go to the capital market, you sell shares or you buy shares, you make income, immediately that income is subjected to tax. And one good thing about it is that the buyer and the seller, they all have to pay. Even if it is 0.5%, the government is getting something. And it's exercising control over security transaction. And then even the currency transaction. Look at the black market that we have all over the place. People are just exchanging dollar to naira, pound sterling to naira, naira to euro, and nothing is being collected in the form of tax. Just as my senior brother mentioned, The opportunities are there, Lord, that the government at the federal or state level will use to generate a lot of revenue.
Professor, I give you 3 minutes. You are taking 5 minutes now.
So let me round off, sir.
So round up, please.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm proposing that the committee should have a special chapter that will bring out all these taxes that the rich should be paying. And that is how to generate massive revenue. All these taxes that we are talking about, VAT, income tax, they are not.
David Biyoku is my name. I'm a lecturer, I'm a retired lecturer, physics. Isa Mustafa Agway Polytechnic in Latvia. I have contribution to make on 2 items of the 4 bills. The tax bill, on the 2 of the 4 tax reform bills. I just want to draw our attention to something. I don't know that I'll be permitted. I will do something unusual. Please, everybody, as you are here, just look at whatever you have. You have your phone here, your laptop, whatever. Bring it out and take a look at what you have. Is any of this from this country? We are consuming all of this from a foreign country, from foreign countries. Thank God we have other examples to look at. Incidentally, I have a WhatsApp message here that I collected from somebody where Indonesia refused the iPhone 16 to be brought into the country because they wanted 40% of the components we produce in the country. Apple gave a lot of money. They refused the money. This giant screen you are looking at here is not made in Nigeria. We are consuming all of these things. Unfortunately, we are just at the receiving end, taking everything as if we have no choice. We have to come to that stage where we need to do the right thing. And the right thing is impose tax. Thank God we have Trump. I'm not a fan of Trump, but you see what he, in fact, not just Trump alone, even Biden did that. Imposed unusual tariffs on China when they saw that China wants to take over their market. We need to protect Nigeria. And how we do that is to put in measures like, if we like, for the start tax that will encourage the development of our own technology. Now, incidentally, almost everything we see here has electronic chip or some semiconductor material. So I did physics. In fact, it's one of the things I wrote in my dissertation, my MSc dissertation, the need to impose tax, one of the recommendations I made, on all products that come in that have any semiconductor material, because there is hardly anything you see of technology today that doesn't have that. So if the value is more than $10, impose a tax. There, not us, not here. Nigeria has a huge market. Yes, sir. Sir? We are not, sir, we are not imposing tariff on just that ordinary semiconductor. The entire thing. All right? Why I'm saying that, Nigeria is a huge market. Yes, sir, that's what I'm doing. Nigeria is a very huge market, probably 200 million. probably 100 million consumers of things that have semiconductor materials, or 50 million, if we want to be very generous. So what I'm saying is that when they know they have this type of market, they will sit up. And part of the sitting up is when you impose tax. Thank God they are here. The tax will be collected at the point of entry of all those goods. David Beyoku, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm coming to that. You see, the good thing is that the technology world has become so broad now, and there is so much competition. Eventually, those who want at cheaper rates will enter our market. That's the point. Yes, sir.
Forever and ever is to say that that loan is a grant. So I think the whole issue there should be looked into. Nobody is supporting the scrapping of NIDA and TED fund. Then, Mr. President, there is another issue, very, very serious issue. The unlimited power given to Mr. President to actually exempt people from paying tax and also to waive tax. Mr. Chairman, if President likes you, he will waive all your tax and you will never pay tax whatsoever, no matter how much you are earning. Let me give you an example, not this president, but the previous president. And this is from IMF record. In 2021, the president of that time waived 6.8 trillion naira tax. 6.8 trillion naira tax. 4% of our GDP was just waived like that. So if a president has that power to do, and now we are crying that we are not having tax revenue, then who is fooling who? So we are saying that you must look at that clause, put conditions, and whatever the president waives must be gazetted. Whatever the president waives must be gazetted. Lastly, Mr. President, you see laws. It is not everything that you write in the law. You don't write everything in the law. When I was in the banking industry, Central Bank Act says that if you don't submit your return after so days, you will be fined 50,000 naira. Then there came a time 50,000 naira is nothing to the bank. So a bank will take its own time in order to submit return, and it will include the draft of the 50,000 naira while submitting. So there are certain things you leave it to the administration to determine from time to time, or to the minister to determine from time to time. Otherwise, materiality will set in, and the money you think is material will become immaterial. Then there are issues that are subsidiary legislation. Look at all this argument as to whether derivation will be 60%, 20%. This should not be in the law. We already have in our constitution Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission. That is their statutory duty. This is something that can change today, and tomorrow it can change. So we should take that one out. Let the governors, the local government chairman, and the federal government, through the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission, sit down and find a political solution. The reason why I say political solution is that presently, Mr. President, nobody can determine the revenue derivation index for every local government in Lagos. All the revenue we are collecting in Lagos, they are either from Ikeja, Lagos Island, Apapa. But even the remotest Badagry local government is enjoying the same index that Lagos State as a whole is getting. So if we give Lagos State 0.48, they go get and give each local government 0.48, which means local governments in Lagos are getting more than their fair share. In fact, one local government in Lagos gets 900 plus million, while the entire Imo State cannot get what one local government is getting in Lagos. And that local government has contributed nothing. So if you want to go technical, to say that you will get the index on consumption, not by state by state, by even local government by local government, village by village. It will be so tedious. So that's why we said let the expert and the 3 tiers of government sit down, get a political solution. We agree and accept that it should be based on consumption. But how do you determine consumption? Population can be an index for consumption. So let it be determined. You cannot come and say 60%, 20%. This is just semantics. Please, we are one country. We are not several countries. So let them go and determine it. If they want the status quo, let it be. If they want to alter it, it's a political matter. ACF, we don't want to go into so many arguments. Then I already told the chairman of National Revenue Service.
I think justice will carry out consultative forum. And the reason is that it's just like the Attorney General we have in the Southwest and the Ohio we have. So we give you good time, and I think we should only be doing justice to us too, and equity to others, so that you can quickly round up in 1 minute.
Thank you, sir. Actually, what I'm saying, I've already mentioned to the chairman, National Revenue Service. I've already accepted the name, and I call him without new name. Sir, in the whole of Nigeria, this guy, Zach, is the most powerful person in Nigeria. He is the most powerful person. Okay, sir. No, I'm talking about the bill. Okay, sir. We have already mentioned that inside.
We know he is only executive chairman of FIRS who we oversight.
Okay, sir. The issue is that he is just one person. His coordinating directors have to be elevated to the level of either deputy governor or executive directors, also to be screened by the National Assembly, so that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members here present. My name is Comrade Mohammed Eneji from the Coalition of Northern Groups, CNG. As it is known, CNG has been in the vanguard of protecting the interest of Nigerians from the northern extraction. And when this particular bill scaled the second reading, it is to be noted that CNG is one of the very few organizations who directly opposed to these particular bills. And for such reason, we went ahead to organize town hall meetings across the 19 northern states. We made a lot of observations, and there are some recommendations that were made here that have already been submitted, sir. Those observations, sir, are contained, number 1, in section 146, which has to do with increasing the VAT rate, which is not advisable given the economic realities in the country. VAT is a consumption tax which reduces the purchasing power of Nigerians. This will lead to inflation, interest rate hikes, unemployment, poverty, and business closure. 2, section 77, which has to do with altering the current VAT sharing formula, which is not also advisable. The major issues in these sections are: A, there is no clear definition or interpretation of the term derivation in the bill. B, the headquartered effect of VAT remittance. The current practice in the country recognizes the consumption of goods and services to have taken place in the state where firms are headquartered, rather than the location. Yes, sir. That's what I have here, sir. That is section 77, sir. Yes, that's what I actually tried to explain, sir. The CNG has been going around organizing conferences and peaceful protests across the 19 northern states and Abuja, rejecting the tax reform bills in its current form. So our position is very clear, just as it is by the pressmen over the weeks have been following our activities regarding that. That was why I mentioned, sir, that we held.
So if you now submit your amendments or recommendations,
observations, yes, sir.
and the committee in its wisdom still reason to take any or reject all,
Yes, sir.
are you going to accept the bill?
Very well, sir.
We are doing it in the best interest of the country.
Exactly, sir.
Your recommendation might not be the one that will go with the tenacity of our ideas. So if we decide not to take it, would that be a problem?
As long as it is clearly spelled, sir,
And
transparent, we will appreciate it. Thank you so much. Number 3, sir, section 59. This section will strangulate TET Fund, NITDA, NASENI, which has a serious negative impact on our educational digital economy as well as science and technological innovations. Number 4, sir, section 82. This may appear as an encroachment into the areas of State Assembly, House of Assembly. Standardization may be achieved by making a template that the Houses of Assembly of the states will adopt and domesticate, as in the case of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, and a couple of other similar legislations. Section number 5, which has to do with section 164. This has to do with income tax exemption, which will expose many farmers to unnecessary hardship, especially those in rural areas. Paying VAT first and requesting a refund will be difficult for many Nigerians, sir. Number 6, section 61 to 62, which contradicts some religious faiths. Section 7, sir, we looked at the lack of differentiation between conventional and religious financial institutions in tax treatment, which could disincentivize some religious financial practices, sir. We looked into section number 8, which has to do with section 16. Religious trust and charitable endowment may be subject to taxation, potentially reducing funds for community projects. Number 9, section 65 to 88. The revenues generated from hydrocarbons extracted in the north might not be equitably redistributed, limiting regional development. Number 10, section...
Sorry, I have a cold. I'm just recovering. And I'm secretary of the Joint Tax Board. By law, the chairman of FIRS, the chairman of the Joint Tax Board. The Joint Tax Board, by statute, is made up of the subnational revenue authorities, the 37 subnational revenue authorities, and the Federal Inland Revenue Service, with the chairman of the FIRS as our chairman. The Joint Tax Board supports the reforms as contained in the 4 reform bills.
Do you have any of the sections of any of the bills that you need it amended?
No, sir.
Do you have any recommendation differently from what has been presented in the bill?
No, we don't have.
Thank you very much. So we are okay. You can take your leave.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Chairman,
distinguished chairman, and all distinguished senators, my words is only words of appreciation.
We intend to keep to your time, and I want to thank you very much for calling us, and so we'll talk straight to our, if you have our document, to our recommendations. My name, I'm Professor Dopnandi Sandanjuma Sheni. I'm the DG Northern Elders Forum, OON, and a former Vice Chancellor. So what we are doing is very serious, sir. We took 3 days in a workshop, brought experts in taxation to read it before we put a conclusion to it. So contrary to many people, we are not condemning the bill. We are only having concern with certain areas of the bill. And if you look at our recommendation, is that the proposed increases in VAT, which many people have mentioned here, we should post it. And the reason behind it, if you read our document, is that when the subsidy was withdrawn, a lot of Nigerians went through hardship. And so to come now and increase VAT from 7.5 to 10%, then their purchasing power will decrease and such. So we just feel it should be a pause. I can see Taiwo here in front. I was with him when he presented in channels for 3 hours. And by the way, we did ask him if Alpha Beta was collecting the thing, and he denied it there, that nothing with that. So it solved our problems. So thank you, Taiwo. It's good to see you right in front. The other thing, sir, is we were concerned with the word derivation. When we read it, and I think people have mentioned, we did not see it defined properly. We want the areas that consume or collect the VAT to be the centers in which the VAT should be collected. In that case, we say the Federal Inland Revenue, or what the new bill says, the Nigerian Inland Revenue or Nigeria Tax Revenue should.
Distinguished, I'm representing the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, TUC. Thank you very much, distinguished, Your Excellencies. I am Comrade General Nuhu Abayo Toro, Secretary General, Trade Union Congress of Nigeria. Your Excellency, I will just go straight to the point because we are already time constrained. We have 4 major concerns, Your Excellencies. One is the rejection of the gradual increment of VAT from the current 7.5% to 15%. And our reason is simple. Allowing the value-added tax rate to remain at 7.5% is the best in the interest of Nigeria, as increasing it will place additional burden on Nigerians, many of whom are already struggling with the economic challenges. At a time when inflation, unemployment, high cost of living are on the rise, imposing higher taxes will further strain households and businesses. So we humbly request that it should be retained the way it was. Secondly, Your Excellencies, the proposed increase in tax exemption bracket to 2.5 million naira per annum. The threshold for tax exemption should be increased from the current 800,000 per annum as proposed in the bill to 2.5 million per annum. This will provide relief to the struggling Nigerians within that income bracket, easing the economic burden they face. Thirdly, Your Excellencies, distinguished senators, we have a concern on TETFON and NASENI. The Trade Union Congress of Nigeria is of the opinion that they should remain a going concern. These institutions have greatly impacted the country through their respective mandates. Both have respectively been instrumental in improving our tertiary education and adopting of homegrown technologies to enhance national productivity and self-reliance. Their continued existence is vital for sustaining progress in education, technology, and economic development across the country. The law setting up these institutions can be re-examined to make it more transparent and repositioned for optimal performance. So we humbly request that they should remain a going concern. Our last concern, distinguished senators, Nigerian Revenue Services taking over the role of NUPRC in the collection of royalties and other revenues in the oil and gas sector is unacceptable.
The committee, other senior government officials, industry executives, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. With the permission of the chairman, if you permit me, I'll just provide very brief context to about 4 items, and then I would read my speech in about 3 minutes. With your permission, sir.
You can squeeze the 4 items plus the speech
into 3 minutes.
3 minutes, because you are the author, you are the dreamer. All the debate we are taking is because of you. We are not giving you any chance for further explanation, but chance to contribute to the debate while we should accept the debate.
All right, sir. My name is Taiwo Yedele. I'm the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee. So the first one is on the supremacy clause. Just to say that when you have a new law like what is before the National Assembly, you will try your best to identify all the laws that you need to amend, but you may not be able to identify all of them. For instance, if our bill says file returns on the 21st, and there is one law somewhere that says file also on the 14th, you will create problems. So, this is not unusual. Even in the FRS Establishment Act that we operate today, there's a similar provision there. In the Deep Offshore Inland Basin Production Sharing Contracts Act, we have it there. We have it in many laws. The National Assembly will say notwithstanding, because they don't want conflict with the laws that they've just passed. So we believe the way to address this is, if the heading is the problem, we can remove supremacy and then have a more acceptable heading for it. The second issue is on the free zone, and it's important to put this in context. Section 8 of the law setting up the free zones. It says, and I'll read, approved enterprises operating within a zone, emphasis, operating within a zone, shall be exempted from all federal, states, and local government taxes, levies, and rates. I'm sure that the people that represented the zone came for this public hearing, entered most likely an airplane, they paid VAT. They may be staying in a hotel, they will pay VAT. They did not complain about that because the flights and the hotel is not within the zone. Why should CIT be different? The approved list of activities starts with manufacturing of goods for export. You will not find anywhere in that act where it says you can sell to the custom territory. What is fair and proper, and in line with what is done around the world, including Ghana, is that you sell to the custom territory, you pay the taxes. The third one, there are just 4 of them. The third one is on informal sector. Informal sector, we believe, should be looked at with a very different lens from what we have always considered. Though the informal sector is largely made up of nano, micro, small, and medium businesses, it is not synonymous with being small. It is not synonymous with being poor. Neither does it mean low income. It essentially means you have attributes such as the level of regulation or no regulation at all, and lack of proper documentation and record keeping. Therefore, we need to change our strategy as a country when it comes to informal sector. We are currently trying to chase every single person in that sector. It's not working and it will not work. What our strategy should be is to collect data from everyone in the sector as much as possible. First, for economic planning, 2, for policy design. 3, to support them so they can grow. And then we can talk about taxing those with the ability to pay, which in our estimation is only the top 3% of the informal sector. And therefore, the presumptive tax regime.
Do you have a paper to present? Are you presenting your paper to the committee?
No, sir.
Okay.
Just 2 minutes, sir.
Okay.
So the presumptive regime that we propose, therefore, is meant to allow for regulation, and we're working with the Joint Tax Board to develop this detailed regulation. I think the other one that you raised, sir, which I should address, is the issue of consultants, and you mentioned issue of alpha beta. Just to say that we have a provision in those bills.
Introduce yourself on behalf of Nigerian governors.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hajia Fatima Yusuf Usman Katsina. I'm here on behalf of Nigerian Governors Forum. The Nigerian Governors Forum would like to, first of all, commend the Distinguished Senate for calling this public hearing and commend the distinguished chairman of the committee here present and other distinguished members. We commend you for your good work. Please note that the members of the Nigerian Governors Forum and the Presidential Tax Reform Committee convened on the 16th of January, 2025, to deliberate on critical national issues, including the reform of Nigeria's fiscal policies and tax system. Some of the recommendations and resolutions made have been hereby submitted to the committee in the form of a communique that was released at the last consultative session. Some of the recommendations included the forum's support for the comprehensive reform of Nigerians' tax laws, and the acknowledgement of the importance of modernization of the tax system to enhance fiscal and stability and align with global best practices. These key provisions warrant careful consideration, and we thank this distinguished committee for doing exactly so. That is to say, for ensuring these reforms are equitable, efficient, and aligned with principles of good governance that is essential for sustainable economic growth, job creation, and increased investment. So we would like to again express our gratitude for the invitation to this public hearing and to engage in this critical conversation. We stand ready to work with all stakeholders and to ensure,
starting from the courageous president that is leading the transformation in our fiscal landscape, to the Senate President, to the members, to the rep, and most importantly, to all Nigeria for their involvement in this laudable transformation that is being led by Mr. President. So my only closing remark is to continue to appreciate the Senate for taking the leadership and taking the lead, not only within the National Assembly, but in the whole country, for making sure that this bill will see the light of the day. So I thank you, the Chairman, Senate Committee on Finance, for your dexterity in management, whether within and outside the Parliament. God Almighty will continue to increase your wisdom, increase your knowledge, and protect you for the Nigeria. So to all my colleagues, thank you. Media, we appreciate you. And then by tomorrow, God's willing, we will move to the House of Rep to continue the patriotic work of this bill. Thank you very much, and God bless all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dr. Umar Yakubu from Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity. We have gone through the bills, all the 4 of them, and we actually support the bills, but we have some observations to make, and I'll itemize them. They're just 4 issues, or 5. One, there's too much focus on revenue generation and distribution. We have not seen deep elements about expenditure and how the revenue generated will be spent. So we would like to see a provision where there is mandatory proactive disclosure of only not revenue generation, but distribution, allocation, and expenditure. It should be mandatory. The second point, all disclosures should be on the websites of all MDAs at the federal, state, and local government level, especially the expenditure part. The The third point is that every taxpayer should receive a periodic email or text message on how the tax collected was utilized as done in several countries. Then lastly, tax revenues by public officers should be made public to foster public integrity. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nabila Gadio, and I'm from Templars Law Firm. Our contribution is with respect to Section 203 of the Nigerian Tax Bill, particularly the definition of the term company. Section 203 provides that company means a company or corporation, including limited liability partnership, established by or under the law in Nigeria or elsewhere. This revised definition of company now includes LLPs, that's limited liability partnerships, effectively classifying them as companies. Ordinarily, we all know partnerships are considered tax transparent, meaning that tax obligations are assessed at the partner level as opposed to the entity level. This characteristic makes partnerships a more attractive business structure. As a result, this new change may pose a significant challenge for businesses already operating as LLPs in Nigeria, as they could face higher tax burdens and increased compliance requirements. So we think it should be taken into consideration and probably limit the definition of company so it only affects company as a limited liability company or a public company as opposed to partnerships. Our second contribution is with respect to exemption from stamp duties, Section 189. There's a removal of share transfer from the exemption. Under the current Stamp Duties Act, all documents relating to transfer of shares and stock are exempt from stamp duties. However, the Nigeria Tax Bill has excluded this item from being exempt. Generally, documents relating to the transfer of shares are often exempt because it will naturally encourage investment, liquidity, and efficiency in financial markets. Even globally, countries with stamp duty exemptions are usually more attractive to investors. So if a country like Nigeria imposes high stamp duties on share transfers, investors may actually prefer to trade in markets where such taxes do not apply. Then our third contribution is with respect to Section 17, which refers taxation on non-resident persons. The provisions basically introduce an arbitrary tax threshold that may not accurately reflect a non-resident company's true profitability, potentially leading to excessive taxation. If enacted and enforced, these provisions could deter non-resident businesses from operating in Nigeria, ultimately stifling foreign trade and investment in the country. We think these provisions are important and should be taken into consideration before the final enactment of the law. Thank you.
The position of Central Bank is very, very clear on these bills. And it is with utmost joy that the bank receives the news of what's going on in the tax arena. We know that long before now, businesses have grappled with multifarious nature of tax regime in Nigeria and affecting investor friendliness of this country to no end. So the attempt by, or the efforts of the President and Commander-in-Chief, Nigerian Armed Forces, in moving in this direction should be commended by every right-thinking Nigerian. And since Central Bank belongs to this category of right-thinking organization, we throw our weight and lend our voice to the success of the enactment of these bills. While we need not bore you with the content of our presentation, which is about the review of critical sections of these legislations and the need for them to pass. Well, we just have to stress a few one. Just to tell Nigerians that we see these legislations as pro-poor, unlike maybe what a few naysayers would have felt.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
against our tax system had been the de-harmonization of the tax. So any step taken to harmonize these tax legislative provisions is encouraging and is very important. And especially because of the work that the committee had done, it is important to also say that it will encourage tax compliance. It will assist development of the economy because of the compliance. Well, I think it is important to establish that tax, as a stakeholder, both in the class and outside the class, I want to establish the fact that it is important to note that tax is all about three very important things: legislation, administration, and policy. And the legislative provisions, the bills, have actually addressed some of these issues. But I have some very serious concerns, especially about jurisprudence. The jurisprudential approach to the provisions of these bills is, some of them are very critical. I have given some few examples. The first is about interpretation of terms. The relationship between the tax administrative bill and the tax bill is such that it has created some very serious cross-referencing issues. Now, every simple student of taxation knows that tax legislations are interpreted by court very strictly. And where there is a problem, it is established that it must be resolved in favor of the taxpayer. And therefore, I think there are some serious conflict between the provisions of the tax administrative bill and the tax bill. And I give very simple example, especially the provisions of section 143 of the tax administrative bill and section 202 of the tax bill. Those sections are the interpreted sections of the two bills. And they try to interpret small companies. Now, there is a clear conflict between their interpretation. And therefore, one will want to beg a question that which one is going to apply when there is need for application. This will create serious problems for the administration, and it will lead to evasion or avoidance. I also have some very serious concern about the provisions of Section 56. Section 56 is talking about the amount of imposition. Unfortunately, the section had actually given some allowances to small taxpayers, but it has not taken notice of the fact that taxes are based on three levels. There is the small taxpayers, there are the medium taxpayers, and the large taxpayers. These bills, especially the tax administrative bill, has completely eliminated the medium taxpayers. And I think it is very critical, because if you are exempting the small companies and you are putting very high taxes on large companies, then you are merging medium companies with large companies, so you are killing them. And every student of tax administration, of tax system, knows that the tax system is always a struggle between the tax base and the tax rate. And therefore, if you are reducing the tax rate for the taxpayers, you are expanding the tax rate, and the tendency that you will collect more is even there. So I will expect that the committee will look at this provision so that they can be harmonized. And very serious too is, and I have listened to especially the chairman of this committee, and he had always been very eloquent about the fact that the essence of these tax reforms is to professionalize the tax system. It is very critical, because you cannot have a non-professional driving a professional system. The tax bills have been very seriously professionalized, and it is encouraging, and it is going to move our tax system forward. But if this tax will be managed by non-professionals, then there's going to be a problem. There is going to be a problem. And the best tax systems now are moving towards serious professional incubation of the tax administrators. So there is the provisions of Section 32 and Section 143 that is providing for tax agents. I think we need to take a very critical look and remove sentiment out of it. I don't think it's about sentiment. It is about driving our tax system to the promised land. When you are saying that you are going to involve tax agents in the tax system, what drives professionalism everywhere in the world are two things. One is licensing. Two is control, because control drives discipline. Licensing drives experience and training. And so if you have a system where nobody is going to guide the licensing process, or you leave the licensing process to everybody, because if, and I'm surprised that my Oga agreed with that provision, any profession means any profession. So the Drivers Association of Nigeria is a sort of professional system. And therefore, if you say the tax agent will be any profession, it will mean that
my name is Professor Kabir Isa Dandago, a professor of accounting at Bayero University, Kano. I'm here to represent the Center for Promotion of Sharia to present the position of the center on the tax reform bill sent to the National Assembly. Mr. Chairman, the center recognizes and appreciates the need to reform the fiscal policy and the tax system of the country to make the system and the policy more functional and effective so that the country can compete with other countries that are tax-based. The center, however, wishes to draw attention of the National Assembly to some issues that need to be taken care of before these bills become fully acceptable to Nigerians, not just the Center for the Promotion of Sharia in the country. 9 issues were listed for the consideration of the distinguished senators. Number 1 is on the supremacy clause. The center expresses concern regarding Section 202 of the Tax Reform Bill, which grant the bill or the bill's supremacy over all other laws related to tax administration, assessment, collection, etc. So the center is the view that this clause is conflicting with the provision of the Constitution. And so
So, no, I'm not asking you to answer now, but you will explain that to the committee. And the issue, and then the issue of Alpha Beta, the issue of Alpha Beta, I want to see in the 4 bills where specifically you have mentioned either a similarity to Alpha Beta or anything close to that. As I said earlier, this committee will do its job transparently. And if there is anything hidden, just like what the Northern Group has done now, maybe there is something hidden, I would prefer the Northern Group also highlighting in its own, bringing attention to your report to exactly use that clause or that section that you think Alpha Beta is the one there, or anything similar to it, so that we can do justice to this legislation. With this, I'll call on the Committee of LCT Mass Initiative. Introduce yourself and then you have to.
Okay, Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah, Nabina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Imam Tamim Yusuf Al-Hassan, representing the Committee of FCT Imams Initiative, the umbrella body of all the Imams and the FCT. Alhamdulillah, the presentation made by Professor on behalf of Center for Promotion of Sharia has made our presentation very easy because we have so many similarities. Therefore, I will just go straight to the points. We raised 6 points of concern, while the professor, I think, raised 9. So in this memorandum, the FCT Imams Initiative highlights the following key issues and provides recommendations for addressing them. Number 1 is the issue of supremacy clause and the potential constitutional conflict. Section 202 of the Nigeria Tax Bill asserts its supremacy over laws related to taxation in the country. However, this provision contradicts the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. To resolve this conflict, we recommend deleting or amending Section 202 to align with the Constitution. Number 2, potential reintroduction of inheritance tax. Section 4.3 of NTB raises concern about the potential reintroduction of inheritance tax, which was abolished in 1996. To avoid this, we recommend expunging the section or adding clarifying clause. Number 3, value-added tax, that is VAT, VAT rate increase and revenue distribution. The proposed VAT rate increase from 7.5% to 7.5% to 15% over 6 years, as provided in Section 146 of the NTB, may lead to higher. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes. No. Okay, so we'll do that later. Thank you. Okay. I'm on number 3, that is value-added tax increase from 7.5% to 15% over 6 years, as provided in Section 146 of the NTB, may lead to higher living cost. In view of this, we suggest reducing the VAT rate to 5% to mitigate negative impacts on the poor. Additionally, the term derivation in Section 77 of the Nigerian Tax Administration Bill requires clarification to ensure consistent application. In view of this, we recommend that derivation be defined as the location where actual consumption takes place.